Several videos ago, I searched through $5,000 in $1 bills and found 37 star notes. Based on eBay sales comps, I estimated their combined value between $205 to $269. But those weren't the only finds in that hunt. Today I'm going to show you those additional finds like fancy serial numbers and older notes and what they're worth by using eBay comps. And at the end, I'll give you the grand total value of the entire $5,000 bank strap hunt, combining the star notes and everything else. The first cool fancy serial number I pulled was this binary note, meaning the serial number is made up of only 2 unique digits. Mine has a pretty eye-catching pattern. It's got 5 5s in a row, so that's going to be more appealing than a serial number that's more scrambled up. To make sure I compared apples to apples, I checked eBay sales only for binary notes with 5 in a row. And over the past month, there's been 9 examples that sold in that category. On screen, you're just gonna see 3. You're gonna see the low, the high, and an average. If you want to see the entire list of sales comps I used for the research and for other bills in this video, I put a link in a pinned comment and the description. That way you can check out the full research if you're interested. Back to the binary, the low was 1960. We had a high of just under 30 and our average was 25.21. Now only 4 of the bills were sitting above the average, and a couple of those sales were for slightly fancier numbers than mine because they not only had the 5 in a row, they also had a triple run. So considering those factors, I'll keep my estimate a touch under the average at about $23 to $25. And when I find something like this, I usually slip it into a currency sleeve to help protect the bill. I'll link the ones I use in the description if you want to check them out. Repeating digits in serial numbers can increase collectability. The longer the streak, the more it can help drive up the selling price. Our running total so far is $23 to $25. Next, let's talk about some birthday notes that I found. Now, these bills are where the serial number reads like a date, and collectors love them because they can match to an actual birthday. Now, there's 4 different formats these dates can read as. I happen to find 3 of them. So the first one is year, month, day format. Then the next one we have is the year, day, month, and then the day, month, year. And the one I didn't find was the month, day, year. There have been 30 sales for the year, month, day format over the last few weeks, with the lowest being $5 and the highest being around $44.50, with an average of $17.19 per bill. 13 bills sold above the average, and I normally estimate under the average with numbers like that, but almost a quarter of the comps came from the same seller, and those averages were $5.50 a sale. So either the seller didn't know the value of these or was pricing low to move quickly. Considering the average was skewed by one seller, I took their comps out of the equation and got an average of $20.74 per bill. So I would estimate mine conservatively between the two averages at $18 to $20. The year, day, month format have been selling a lot less frequently, and I had to go back 7 weeks to pull 16 sales. The average was about $13.60 a bill, with a range from $5.32 on the low end up to $25 for the high end. Now, 9 of these sat above the average, but because they aren't selling as quickly, I'd realistically estimate my bill at about $10 to $15, but this is all depending upon how patient you are as a seller. And finally, the day, month, year format are selling even more infrequently. There were only 6 sales in the last 7 weeks, and they averaged just over $25, but prices were all over the place from about $11 up to nearly $45. So half were between the $11 to $15 range, and with such a small sample size, I'd stay conservative and estimate my bill at around $10 to $15 just for the sake of selling within a reasonable amount of time. Some birthday note formats sell faster than others, and they can be buyer specific. If the date means something personal, a collector may pay top dollar. You might need to be willing to sit on the bill for a while though in order to find that perfect buyer. Running total so far is $61 to $75. The next find is this X note, and these are special because districts usually don't print enough bills to reach the X suffix letter. For perspective, each letter starting from A usually represents 96 million printed notes, with the exception of O and Z, which aren't used. Now, series 2009 was the last time X notes were printed. For the X note, I found 7 sold comps from the past month, ranging from $280 up to $895, with an average of $607 per bill. Now, since fewer than half of the sales landed below that average, I'm being conservative and giving this one an estimated value of $5. Suffix letters matter more than most beginners realize. If you spot an X, you're in collectible territory. Running total so far is $66 to $80. My next find was this web note, which was actually one of the more interesting finds from this hunt. And web notes were printed on experimental web-fed printing presses, and they only show up on 3 series, the 1988A, 1995, and 1993. Now, the easiest way to tell if you have a web note, you want to look at the front plate identifier, And if there's no letters in front of the number, that means it's going to be a web note. The other way you can check, look at the backplate identifier. On a web note, it's located up here after the word trust. On a regular note, it's going to be located under the E. I stuck to comps on the 1988 A series since that's what I found, and I skipped over the districts and blocks that were more rare to keep it accurate. So over the past 7 weeks, there have been 8 sales with the average at about $19.44 per bill. The lowest went just under $11 and the highest was close to $30. Now, most of the bills actually sat above the average, so I feel confident in estimating the value on my bill at $20. Most beginners don't even realize they've found a web note because the subtle difference in the plate numbers can go unnoticed. If you can spot these, you're already ahead of most people. Running total is $86 to $100. Next up are 2 radar notes that I found, and these are also called palindromes, where the serial number reads the same forward as it does backward. These have had steady collector demand, and over the past few weeks there have been about 21 sales. The average landed at around $13.41 per bill, with sales ranging from as low as $2.79 up to $21.49. 10 of those comps sat above the average, but there were some really low sales that pulled the average down. That usually happens when sellers don't realize what they've got and list too cheap. So I'm comfortable with putting the estimated value of my bills right around $12 to $14 each. Oddball underpriced comps can drag averages down, so always consider the full range, not just the average. Running total is $110 to $128. I also found 7 scattered ladder serial numbers. These are fancy serial numbers, also called mixed ladders or scrambled ladders. And what it is a serial number that is made up of 8 unique digits. And if you arrange them in numerical order, they're going to complete a ladder. So it's either going to be 0 through 7, 1 through 8, or 2 through 9. I looked at 25 sales over the past several weeks. The average was $6.21 per bill, with the lowest being $4 and the highest being $20. Now the highest was clearly an outlier since it was nearly double the next highest comp. There were only 10 bills above the average, so factoring that along with the high outlier prices, I'm staying below the average and estimating these at about $4 to $5 each. Don't let high outliers set your expectations. Mixed ladders usually sell in the low single digits unless the note is uncirculated. Running total is $138 to $163. Lastly, I found 22 older notes spread across 1988A, 1995, and 1999. Now we're going to start with the 1988A, which I found 5 of. I found 11 sales comps over the last 7 weeks. The average came out to $503 per bill with a range of $369 up to $552. 7 of those sales were actually above the average, but with only 11 comps in 7 weeks, the demand didn't look very strong unless the bill was uncirculated. So for that reason, I'd estimate these around $4 to $5 each. Now we're going to move on to the 1995 series, which I found 11 of. Looking at 12 comps over the past 7 weeks, the average price was $5 with a low of $250 and a high of $720. 6 bills sat above the average, but given the relatively thin demand, I'd stay again on the conservative side and estimate these at $4 to $5 each. And finally, we have the series 1999 bills, which I found 6 of. I was only able to pull 8 sales comps over a 7-week period, so demand looks even lower here. The average was $408 per bill with sales ranging from $295 up to $649. Now 4 of the 7 bills were above the average, but factoring in the low overall demand, I'd estimate these at $3 to $4 each. Older series catch collectors' eyes, but condition drives demand. Circulated bills tend to move slower unless priced right. So here's the final tally. The fancy serial numbers and older bills I just showed you add up to an estimated value of $220 to $267. Now, when combining that with the 37 star notes, the entire $5,000 hunt comes out to a grand total of $425 to $535. And this is all from bills that could easily be overlooked in circulation. So just remember, you don't need to find bills worth hundreds to profit, because multiplying these smaller flips can really add up fast. That's why bank strap hunting isn't just for collectors. It's really a simple way to start turning everyday finds into a real flipping side hustle. So if you want to see how I broke down those star note values that made up the first half of this total, go ahead and check out that video next.